Welcome back to the Daily Dope Show. I'm your host, OG Brand. Some of you may or may not know that I live in the Flint area, and that includes Genesee County. That is, the county that I reside in. And recently they put out this little memo talking about the Genesee County Board of Health and how, they're against the marijuana legalization ballot initiative, which is, the Board of Health. You kind of expect this, but this document proves the short-sightedness of these prohibitionists that we're dealing with. And this is like, I just seen a story about California. I might do a clip about it. Whereas 80+% of municipalities, upwards of 85% of municipalities, opted out of the commercial marijuana market. What does that mean? That means the state is legal, but most places you don't have legitimacy. That doesn't make any fucking sense. This is absurd. All right, this is all wrong. This is not what anybody envisioned. This is not what anybody fought for that are activists. This kind of like tight control, overabundance of caution, ridiculous clamping down on production, and basically the seizing of the means of production is essentially what happened with the medical marijuana in Michigan already. I mean, for real. You don't believe me? We're about to approach a time when there's dispensaries and no growers. Nobody's got a license. They're waiting on licenses. They're going to start busting people that have no license. That's in the near future. All because, they came in and they wanted to take it over. Because in Michigan, it was already working pretty good on its own. You could have just looked at what people were doing and just made that the regulations. Oh, you got some overage, you can bring it in. Get it tested, take it to the dispensary, sell it to them. Dispensaries are just a collective of people that know a bunch of people that grow and have extra weed. That was working just fine. You could even make limits on certain things, and no one would probably have complained. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked, and the reason I even brought the MMFLA up is because all across Michigan you had these town hall meetings. And just like in California with recreational marijuana, I guess, people were opting out. They opted out in the town I live in. The town I live in hosts the Cannabis Cup. The biggest party for weed in Michigan. But somehow they don't want anybody to run a dispensary or grow a commercial facility or any of that. So Genesee County came up with this, the Board of Health resolution opposing the legalization of marijuana for general use in Genesee County communities. So they're just basically saying that they don't want you smoking weed. They don't want you to smoke weed. You already smoke weed, but they don't like it. They want you to go to jail. They want to steal your property. This is the county I live in, so this is kind of brave for me to even make this video. And I probably will be calling Mrs. K. Doer, because it does say to call her. This resolution does not relate to the use of marijuana approved for medical purposes in compliance with current state law. Boy, but they probably were writing the same kind of bullshit back in 2008 when that campaign was underway and that ballot initiative was going to get voted on. Because that's the way Genesee County and a lot of other places in Michigan are. I don't understand why people call Michigan a blue state. Tell me why it's a blue state. Because we voted for some Democrats over the years? Big deal. It's not a blue state. It is not. The bluest you're going to get is some blue dog Democrats that basically are right-wingers, and they're usually older white dudes that are racist. I just seen them voter shaming people for voting for third parties the other day at a rally. That's your Democrats in Michigan. They're not very liberal. And I mean, that's about as liberal as it gets. Most people don't even pay attention to shit and don't care about nothing. So that's how these people can get away with this kind of crap. All right, so anyway, let's see what they're saying about it. What could be so bad that the Genesee County Board of Health is like freaking out about it and had to put a memo out? Whereas proposals to legalize the general use of marijuana are being placed on the ballot across Michigan, and whereas general marijuana use and possession is not permitted by federal and state law. Well, that second one there, you think that that's what this is. It's so that we can change the state law. Are you against citizen ballot initiatives all of a sudden? Is that what you're trying to say? Because this is like ridiculous to even say that, oh, this isn't allowed under state law, so we're opposed to it becoming state law that it's allowed. It's not how it works, all right? It's not how it works. And by the way, you're the Board of Health. You're not the Board of Laws. Now, the fact that it's not permitted by federal law is a big issue, and only people that are strictly anti-freedom would say something about it being against federal law. Okay? We have this thing called states' rights in America, where states are supposed to be little experiments of democracy to try new things out and see what we can get away with. It's ridiculous that we have to fight for the freedom to use marijuana in the first place, lady, Mrs. K. Dower. Why should we have to fight you for our right to be able to use marijuana? That doesn't make any sense to me. That's what I never understood. And that's why when you talk about it being against the federal law, you just prove that you are basically into some kind of authoritarian situation where you're totally okay with people going to prison for a plant. How is that good for health? How's that good for public health to stick people in dirty, grimy prisons because they used a plant that you don't approve of, that you don't like? Why don't you like it? Well, we're about to find out. Because the National Institute on Drug Abuse reports that 1 in 6 teens that use marijuana become addicted to its use, and marijuana is now the #1 reason kids enter treatment for substance abuse more than alcohol, cocaine, heroin, meth, ecstasy, and other drugs combined. Probably because a lot of kids usually don't have access to all those other things, or alcohol is never something that parents send kids to rehab over. So the other ones are usually not accessible to what you're calling kids. And neither is marijuana generally. But when they get caught with marijuana, which is the easiest thing to get caught with, as we all know, what happens? Oh, yeah, that's right. They take them to rehab and force them to go to rehab. And that's why it's the #1 reason why kids go to rehab. It's absurd, all right? So anyway, you're talking about NIDA. They don't got any credit. NIDA gets 0 credit when it comes to talking about marijuana. So you shouldn't be using them. They're not a scientific body. They're the National Institute on Drug Abuse. All they care about is keeping marijuana illegal. That's it. If they cared about anything else, they would be doing things. But they're not. They're just sitting back there continuing to make marijuana sound like it's bad. And that's it. But, however, you go to their website, and they've actually came around a little bit, even since this stuff that you're talking about. That's kind of older NIDA. That's like 2016, 2015 NIDA. So you should go back to NIDA and actually update your information, because this stuff's a little bit old. Anyway, we'll move on. Whereas Monitoring the Future 2017 reports that marijuana use increased to 24% among adolescents in 8th, 10th, and 12th grades combined. We'll get to that in a little bit, because I have good news for people that are so concerned about that. Adolescents are using marijuana less. Now, the more it's becoming legal, the less teens are using. And that's statistically true in states where marijuana has been legalized. It has even spilled over into states where marijuana hasn't been legalized yet. But even there, use has gone down. So it's kind of strange that this 2017 report is It's basically, and you know, we'll get into this another day, another topic another day. When it comes to the reports and all your reports that these people are using, are all geared and funded, and the purpose of the report was to come up with bad things about marijuana. And oftentimes those reports end up saying more good things about marijuana than bad, but they always have to do something to make it so marijuana sounds bad. And they do. They find, you know, ways to make the numbers sound like there's bad things going on. But there's not. There's not. Millions of people use marijuana every day. We don't see any problems from it. Like I was just saying, we had this cannabis cup in my town. This town is like population less than 5,000, you know, and you know there's like 2 main roads, and there's the road that the cannabis cup's on is a little bit outside of town, so the traffic for the cup don't really spill over into the main town area. However, the road that it's located on is a 55-mile-an-hour highway, and people fly through there going like 60 or 70 sometimes. So they had police patrolling for traffic there. However, there was 5,000 people coming and going to this event all day, every day, for 2 days straight, and there was not a single car accident reported. And this is the 5th year that this has gone down. So, Genesee County, did you know that? That's in your county that happened. Speaking of that, whereas Healthy and Productive Michigan, that's the prohibition group. I'm going to make a video in a minute. Like the next video that you're going to see me put up, and I might do it tonight still, is them guys being on a panel talking about legalization. So anyway, Healthy and Productive Michigan is an absolute joke of a anti-marijuana lobby group that's out there parading around old talking points that we don't even like to debunk these talking points anymore, because it's just you just look stupid saying them. So to argue with you about the talking point kind of brings us down to your intellectual level, that we have to even acknowledge that what you're saying has some kind of, like, it's been said before. So anyway, they're talking about impaired driver related fatalities have more than doubled from 2012 to 2016, rising from 78 fatalities in 2012 to 159 fatalities in 2016. And I don't even know where they're talking about. Are they just talking about in general, like nationwide? Did this happen in Michigan? And what's the significance between 2012 and 2016? What's up with those years? Why is that important? So that doesn't even make sense. And every time that you see people trying to tie marijuana legalization with impaired driving or fatalities, and then when they say this marijuana impaired driver related fatalities, that doesn't even make sense. Say that out loud. Marijuana impaired driver related fatalities. First of all, we have not proven this whole thing about marijuana impaired drivers. There's no proof that that's even a thing. And as I was driving home from the cannabis cup the other day, I came up to this intersection of my road that my road is off of, which is another main road, that intersects the road that the cannabis cup was on. And there's a left turn lane there for me to turn onto my road. And as I came up to there was a truck coming down the hill, probably going about 60. And I could have took that left in front of him, and I probably would have made it with a little bit of breathing room, no problem. But it was a close call. It was one of those things where you're just like, yeah, I could probably make it. It's going to be like, you know, close, and I could floor it and make it so it's not as close, but it's a sharp turn. So, you know, and basically in a situation like that, it was like, to me, it was a no-brainer. No, just wait for him to go by. But I seen right then and there how impaired driving could lead to an accident on that very corner, and has. And there's been many deaths that happen on that corner because people taking lefts or people blowing through the stop sign or whatever. People go pretty fast on that highway. So, I mean, all in all, what I'm trying to say is marijuana impaired driving is bullshit. I don't believe it. I don't think you would even try to drive if you were too stoned. It's just not something people do. You know, drunk driving is something people do out of necessity. It's not that people are like, hey, let's go grab a 6-pack and drive around town. No, that's not how drunk driving works. Drunk driving is people have to get home after they drink. Just like people had to get home after they were smoking weed and dabs and shit at the Cannabis Cup all day. But nobody got in a wreck. Imagine that. So it's just a bunch of bullshit, this driving while impaired. And it's always, always, always the HIDTA, the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Report from Colorado, the Rocky Mountain. We know this, and we're going to see that in that other video, but whatever. So, whereas increased consumption of marijuana would likely lead to higher public health and financial costs for society, no, it wouldn't. And I've done this before. I've done all these talking points a million times. First of all, there's never been any proof that there's increase in consumption of marijuana. Like, you're acting like because we're going to legalize it, all of a sudden everybody's going to start smoking weed. It couldn't be farther from the truth. I mean, smoking weed's not that big of a deal. It's pretty much like a decision you want to make. Like, do I smoke weed or not? And most people don't smoke weed because of the stigma and the ramifications of possibly getting found out that they smoked weed. That's stigma too, but essentially piss tests and jobs and shit. So, it's just recycling old talking points. Addictive substances like alcohol and tobacco already result in much higher social costs than the revenue they generate. Well, the problem is this isn't alcohol and tobacco. We don't have a public health crisis going on like we do with those two. Nobody's ever died from marijuana. Alcohol, you have like almost 100,000 people a year. With cigarettes, we're talking like almost 500,000 people a year are dropping dead. And not only the dropping dead part, but they're in these cancer wards. And a lot of these people don't go in there with insurance. So that's societal costs in the billions just for that. We don't have any of that kind of shit for weed. We don't have any societal cost for weed at all. I mean, think about it. The only societal cost for weed is when you put somebody in, book them into jail, start them along a path where they got to go to court and then do a bunch of other shit. This is all shit that costs society money. It's people having to go through the criminal justice system and then get housed in fucking jails at a clip of about, anywhere from $30,000 to $80,000 a year, depending on their health condition and needs. So you're talking about money and health, all this public cost to society. We don't, that's like the mootest point I think I've ever heard of prohibitionists say, because nobody sees those costs. You can't name one. I could, with alcohol, I can come up with them all day. Oh, there's that thing where people beat the shit out of each other. That's a societal cost. How about all the car wrecks? Societal cost. How about all the court cases tied up? How about all the missing days of work after the Super Bowl and after the 4th of July and after freaking New Year's Eve? These are all societal costs that are direct result of alcohol. But yet you're going to sit here and say that we're going to have this new societal cost is going to pop up out of nowhere just because we legalize marijuana, when it's the opposite. The societal cost of marijuana being illegal is that we have to pay for people to go to court in the criminal justice system. More people get arrested for marijuana than all other crimes put together. So yeah, it is a big deal. You go to the courthouse and look at the docket and tell me it's not a big deal. This video is going to take a long time, guys. Sorry. But this is ridiculous. Smart Approaches to Marijuana reports employees who tested positive for marijuana were 85% more likely to have a workplace injury compared to a control group who tested negative. And that's bullshit too. The reason it is because what you have is people are getting discovered that they have marijuana in their system when they go to the clinic after having a workplace injury. That's a no-brainer. As to why. Why? Because marijuana stays in your system for at least 30 days. So this is not talking about people who were actually impaired at work. You want to compare that to the ones with alcohol? How about the control group who tested for alcohol? They're the ones that 100% of them that got injured at work where the alcohol group was, you know, impaired at work because they tested positive for alcohol. You can't test positive for alcohol later on down the line when you're sober or the next day when you sleep it off. I mean, not in the numbers that are going to prove that you were impaired at the time of the accident. That's almost always. But with this, they even say the way they word it, employees who tested positive for marijuana. You're just saying stoners, right? That's what it sounds like to me. Like stoners are just more prone to getting into accidents. You're not actually saying that they were impaired on the job because you don't have that test. That's not what you're saying. So it's just one of those scary things that Sam always does. And by the way, what are you using smart approaches to marijuana for? Why would you care what they report? They're just a prohibitionist front piece of a group of people that basically work for Big Pharma and probably have alcohol and tobacco money funding them too, even though they act like they don't. I mean, it's all of the same people that want to make marijuana illegal are funding these people somehow. They want these people out there saying these stupid things and influencing people like the Genesee County Board of Health. Whereas it is not possible to foresee and mitigate all the associated risk and impact to our communities through the legalization of marijuana for general use, and wherever be it resolved, the Genesee County Board of Health is opposed to the legalization of marijuana for general use, and be it further resolved, the Genesee County Board of Health encourages other organizations to oppose the legalization of marijuana for general use. And by the way, these guys completely are the same people that if you get caught with some weed in the Genesee County area, you'll probably have to go to them and admit that you're addicted and fill out a bunch of paperwork and see a psychiatrist and shit and go to addiction counseling. That's what the Genesee County Board of Health's interest in this issue is. They don't want to lose that because that's probably a huge revenue stream via some kind of government grants or funding that they get from somebody, because that's how it works. That's how these people survive. So a couple of things we're going to talk about real quick before I go is the fact that Flint had decriminalized marijuana a long time ago, but their attitude has not budged. And this is the biggest city in Genesee County. And believe me when I say that the sentiment in Flint is basically the sentiment in the smaller communities, but the smaller communities don't have any kind of notable police forces that are actually doing anything more than just probably picking people up for possession all the time because of because it's so easy to do. But as far as like going on some major bullshit, it still happens too, which is why we have to do something, because no matter what, people are getting arrested for things that probably shouldn't be that big of a deal. And then there's also people that are getting arrested for things that are probably what they would consider a lot of things, like a lot of plants or whatever. But in essence, in scalability and all that, it's not. Like, they're making huge deals out of things, threatening people with massive sentences, because the more marijuana becomes legal, it's like they want to send the message out there that if you do anything outside of what they want to see as being legal, then you're going to get stiff penalties. And that's how they insulate the high profits that the legal marijuana business is about to get. But I mean, when this happened, this was way back in 2012. So in Flint, 60% of ballots counted. 60% landslide. November of 2012. Voted in favor to change to decriminalize possession of less than an ounce of marijuana. Police say that since marijuana is illegal under state and federal law, their enforcement practices will not change. Quote, We're still police officers and we're still empowered to enforce the laws of the state of Michigan and the United States, said Flint Police Chief Alvern Locke. And believe me, the new chief is basically the same sentiment. Quote, "We're still going to enforce the laws as we've been enforcing them." And I did watch the movie, or the Netflix original series called Flint Town, and it was basically just a fluff piece for the Flint Police Department. And in that, they definitely gave me the feeling that they hate marijuana, and they still want to make people feel like if you don't go to church twice a week and, you know, I don't even know what, because Flint's economy is shit, so the people are basically oppressed and poisoned with lead water. But somehow it's okay to still treat people like second-class citizens or even complete criminals just because of marijuana. Okay, Flint police, we see we got your fucking priorities at. It's ridiculous. Brian Morrissey of the Coalition for a Safer Flint, the group that gathered signatures to get the initiative on the ballot, said he's disappointed with the city's decision. Quote, "If the city police want to follow state law rather than city law, then maybe the state should be paying their salary," Morrissey said. Furthermore, just another quick little thing here, blurb. "The city of Flint decriminalized marijuana possession of less than an ounce for anyone older than 19 in 2012. According to local reports, the city police would continue arresting, acting under federal law. This also means that property can be seized from individuals that police believe have any connection to drug money, even if they are growing or using marijuana under Michigan Medical Marijuana Act." So that's the kind of, we kick in the door now and you come and deal with the court system to get your shit back later. You don't believe me? Well, first of all, let's look at the arrests. Genesee County ranks, this list is backwards. They're acting like number 30 is the best possible thing going on, because 4.8 people in Berrien County are arrested in 2014. I think that's, yeah, these are 2014 statistics, per 1,000 for marijuana. So if you look at this list, that would put Genesee County at 7th, with 3 residents for every 1,000 people getting arrested, for a total of 1,224 arrests out of a population of 412,895. Arrests as a percent of all arrests, marijuana arrests as a percent of all 2014 arrests. And then if you look at this, you'll notice this number down here starts on 2008 and then it's right around 900. That's the year that medical marijuana was legalized in Michigan. Now look, as soon as that happened, we start going up. And this 2014, believe me, it goes back up. It stays above 1,200. It never goes below it. Once it gets to 1,200, that stays there. So you don't think, you think they want to give up anything over here? No, they love this. This is what keeps people going to court and paying fines and sitting in jail cells and all that good shit. All the shit that makes them money. Oh, here's something else that makes them money, and they're not trying to get rid of. Police seize 15 million in Michigan, some cases without criminal charges. How many of those, you say? A lot. Police agencies reported 15.2 million in cash and property seized over 11 months of 2016, according to a new report from the Michigan State Police. And about 10% of those 5,290 cases reported, no one was charged with the violation for which the forfeiture was authorized. The report states 4,955 of those cases are related to the Public Health Code for Controlled Substances. The report states 427 were related to marijuana possession. And we're talking, that's just possession. 824 related to the delivery, manufacture of marijuana. So we're well over, we're at almost a quarter of the total. Well, nah, what a quarter would be, what, 15? Are we 1250? Yeah, we're at a quarter. A quarter of all of these arrests. And believe me, that's the possession alone is a lot. But if you look at the over possession, like the selling or the growing, 824, that's like the total number of all the other drugs put together, or other narcotic of less than 25 grams. We're talking about meth or MDMA or any of that kind of shit. It's all marijuana, guys. So that's their cash cow when it comes to this forfeiture shit. And you know why? Because it's the easiest one. Marijuana, especially medical marijuana growers, generally don't even have guns. And they definitely, a lot of people aren't, you know, marijuana growers are usually pretty peaceful cats. They usually don't want to shoot people. You know, they don't want to get robbed either, but, you know, there's a lot of fucking real estate between not wanting to get robbed and actually shooting another human being. And then some other shit. According to all the things I see, and I look at what's important, I don't look at those bullshit statistics, but we're seeing teen drug use going down in Colorado. I've seen study after study after study. Now, I've also seen the studies that say it has gone up, and there's been about 2 of those, 2 or 3 of them maybe. And the thing about those is they're always done by the same weird groups, and like the Rocky Mountain high intensity drug trafficking area report. Come on, you know. And then so when one of those agencies put out a report saying that teen use has gone up, you get 500 fucking outlets writing a story about it. So it seems like if you do a Google search today about teen use going down, all you're going to get is a bunch of stories about teen use going up. And every single one of them use the same 1 or 2 fucking studies. This one here comes from federal data. There's also the ones in Colorado that Colorado's Board of Public Health does, and they have reported that teen use has gone down. Everybody's reporting that teen use has gone down to the lowest levels in over a decade. Well, this says nearly a decade, and this was in 2017. I've done videos about this, so this is not a good talking point for the prohibitionists to keep bringing up the same old bullshit when they do bring it up. And like I just said with that, when you see a search about no rise in marijuana driving accidents, same situation. You get the 500 news outlets reporting about how drug driving spike, using increase in marijuana and opioid crashes. And none of these are based on anything but this high intensity drug trafficking area report. And then you got this other thing going on where a lot of these people that are data miners, and that's how they do studies, is they pour over the data, but what they don't do is they don't distinguish, and this is definitely what the Rocky Mountain HIDTAR report says, because they make the disclaimer in every one of these reports at the very beginning. They say, well, you know, just because somebody had marijuana in their system doesn't mean that they were high when the crash occurred. And that should basically make you throw away the fucking report right when you read that. Because everything after that is fucking bullshit because of that. Not only that, but there's also this thing where they mix alcohol or other pharmaceuticals, and just because marijuana was there, they call it a marijuana related. There's no such thing as marijuana related, guys. It's either marijuana made it so you were impaired and it caused you to get in a wreck, or it didn't. So Canada did a report where they did a study, and it was a really this report was way more detailed analysis, I want to say, and a study of what actually went on in Colorado after legalization and other places. But we got some quotes from the people that did the study. The thing to remember, these tests are not very specific in the sense that they detect the presence of THC in someone's blood 28 days or so before the accident occurred. The test cannot indicate whether someone was using or intoxicated with THC or cannabis at the time of the accident. Unlike alcohol, there isn't a clear relationship between impairment and the levels of substance in the body when it comes to marijuana. We know that people have THC in their bloodstream, but they may have been impaired at the time of the crash. It's because the way THC is stored in the fatty tissue is highly variable based on body composition. You can have it in your bloodstream from anywhere from 72 hours up to 30 days. And yeah, people always forget to mention the U.S. experience also showed a fall in alcohol-related road deaths in states that legalized medical marijuana. So the thing about it is this study says that there's no reason to worry about having more accidents after you legalize weed. And this is like something that they look at and they're like, okay. Now, I'm not going to say that they used this very wisely, but this is the kind of thing that they looked at, you know. This is the shit they looked at. 28 different indicators. I mean, this is a more intense study than all that, but basically the component that talks about driving while impaired basically says there's nothing to that. There's nothing to all the claims. It's mostly these claims were made, like I just said, and like I just read them saying that there's no real way that you can make these claims because there's no real testing going on to determine whether somebody that just got in a car accident just smoked a joint before that accident or not. There you go. That's all there's nothing else you need to know about that. So overall, I'm just kind of sick of the ridiculous police state that I live in here in Michigan, and wish that the arrests would just go away, because I just heard another friend of mine talking about on Facebook that he's looking at 7 years for growing some plants. This shit's got to stop, man. My heart is broken. It's been broken many hundreds of times, thousands of times, living in Michigan, watching people get busted for weed, watching people get shot over weed. And it's just ridiculous. All right, that's all I got on this one. Peace.